Welcome, everyone. One of the best ways to prepare for the IELTS speaking test is to see it in action. That's exactly what we're doing today with this complete mock test from Spinta. As you listen, think about what the candidate does well and where they could improve. Afterwards, we'll compare notes with a full performance breakdown. Let's begin.
Good morning. My name is Laura. Can you tell me your full name, please?
Good morning, Laura. My name is Alex Martin. You can call me Alex.
Thank you. Where are you from, Alex?
I am originally from a medium-sized city in the north called Halifax. I lived there most of my life, though I moved to the capital a few years ago for work. Halifax is calm, a bit gray in winter, but it's very friendly and has great local markets. And this small harbor that I love walking by when weather allows.
Right. Let's talk about where you live now. Do you live in a house or an apartment?
I live in a two-bedroom apartment in a converted warehouse in the city center. It used to be an industrial building, so the ceilings are high and there are large windows, which I like because they let in a lot of light. The layout is open plan, which suits my lifestyle, though sometimes it gets noisy because of the shops downstairs and the foot traffic at weekends.
What do you like most about your neighborhood?
What I like most is the variety. There are independent cafes with good coffee, a cinema that shows foreign films, and small parks where local kids play football. I also appreciate being able to walk to work or cycle, so I don't rely on public transport. That said, I wish there were more quiet corners and fewer late-night deliveries, but overall, it's convenient and lively, which fits me well.
Has your neighborhood changed since you moved there?
Yes, it's changed quite a bit. When I first moved in about 5 years ago, there were more empty storefronts, and the area felt a bit neglected. Lately, there's been investment. New restaurants, a co-working space, and some cultural events. That brought more people, and higher rents too, so some long-standing shops have closed. It's a mixed blessing because the economy improved, but community feels slightly weakened.
Right. Now, let's talk about family. How many people are there in your family?
My immediate family has 4 people. My parents, my younger sister, and me. My sister is studying medicine at university, so she's quite busy. My parents live back in Halifax, and we try to meet up every month or so. Extended family is not very close geographically, but we keep in touch through video calls, especially now that travel is easier again.
What is your relationship like with your family?
We have a warm relationship. We argue sometimes about small things like politics or who cooks for family gatherings, but generally we're supportive. My parents were very encouraging about education and curiosity, so they influenced my decision to travel and study abroad. I try to visit them when I can, and I call my mother a couple of times a week because she likes to chat about everyday things.
Do you prefer to live with family or alone, and why?
I prefer living alone at the moment because it gives me independence and space to focus on work. That said, living with family has advantages like emotional support and shared responsibilities. In the future, I might live with a partner or move back home temporarily, but right now, independence suits my routine and the kind of social life I have in the city.
Now about work or study. Are you working or studying at the moment?
I work full-time as an urban designer for a small consultancy. My role involves creating proposals for public spaces and advising local governments on pedestrian-friendly streets. It blends creative design and practical planning, which I find stimulating because it affects how people actually use urban spaces.
How long have you been doing this job?
I've been in this role for 3 years, after a couple of years working in a larger firm where I learned technical skills. Switching to a smaller team allowed me more creative freedom and responsibility on projects, which accelerated my professional growth.
What do you enjoy most about your work?
I enjoy seeing ideas become real places. For example, last year we redesigned a derelict square into a community garden with seating and lighting. Watching residents use that space was very rewarding. I also enjoy the collaborative aspect. Working with engineers, local councils, and community groups to balance aesthetics, budget, and functionality.
Do you think you'll stay in this job for a long time?
I hope to stay in the field of urban design, though I might move into a strategic planning role or eventually start my own practice. I value the impact the profession can have on people's daily lives, so even if my exact position changes, I expect to remain connected to the discipline.
Let's move on to hobbies. What do you do in your free time?
In my free time, I like cycling, sketching, and cooking. Cycling helps me clear my head and explore the city. Sketching keeps my design skills sharp. And cooking is a way to relax and be creative in a different medium. I also enjoy going to small music gigs with friends occasionally.
How long have you had these hobbies?
Cycling has been part of my life since childhood, sketching since university, and cooking more intensely over the past 5 years. I started cooking because I wanted healthier meals, and it's turned into an enjoyable ritual where I try different cuisines on weekends.
Which hobby do you enjoy the most, and why?
Cycling is probably my favorite because it combines exercise, transport, and discovery. On a good day, I can cycle 30 to 40 kilometers and find new neighborhoods or parks. It's meditative in a way and also informs my work, because experiencing streets from a cyclist's perspective highlights practical street design issues.
How often do you exercise?
I try to cycle at least 3 times a week and do some light gym workouts twice a week. Sometimes work gets busy and routines slip, but I make an effort to keep active because it boosts focus and reduces stress.
Okay. Finally, thinking about the future, what are your plans for the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I hope to take on more leadership in projects and maybe complete a postgraduate course in sustainable urbanism. I'd also like to travel to study different urban models, maybe spend a few months abroad learning about transport systems in European cities. On a personal note, I hope to buy a small property or at least save enough for a deposit and keep developing my sketchbook practice.
Why do you want to study sustainable urbanism?
Because I think cities are at the center of climate solutions. Understanding sustainable strategies and policy frameworks would allow me to design public spaces that are resilient and equitable. Also, this knowledge would help me advocate more effectively to clients and councils for long-term rather than short-term improvements.
Thank you. Now we'll move to part 2. I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for 2 to 3 minutes. You will have 1 minute to prepare. Here is your topic. Describe a memorable journey you took. Please say where you went, why you went there, who you traveled with, and explain why the journey was memorable.
Okay. I have 1 minute, thank you. One of the most memorable journeys I took was a week-long coastal trip along the west coast with 2 close friends. We set off from the city and drove north along winding roads, stopping in small fishing villages. The reason for the trip was partly a break from work, and partly because one of my friends had just finished a long project and wanted to celebrate. We traveled together by car, which gave us flexibility to stop wherever we wanted. We camped one night on a clifftop and stayed in a small bed and breakfast another night. The journey was memorable for several reasons. First, the landscape was unexpectedly dramatic. Cliffs plunging into the sea, vast skies and golden light in the evenings that made everything look cinematic. Second, the journey felt unplanned and liberating. We had a rough route, but allowed detours when we found a promising path or a local recommendation. That spontaneity led to small discoveries like a family-run bakery where we tasted the best bread, and an elderly fisherman who told us stories about the coast. Third, the social element made it special. Spending consecutive days in close quarters, sharing food, conversation, and even some arguments, built a sense of camaraderie. We debated music choices, swapped life stories, and supported each other through fatigue on long walks. Finally, the trip offered perspective. Stepping away from daily routine, seeing different livelihoods and weather patterns, I reflected on my own pace of life and priorities. I remember coming home feeling calmer and more focused, with a small notebook full of sketches and ideas that later influenced a design project at work. So overall, it combined natural beauty, human connection, spontaneity, and creative inspiration, which is why it remains vivid in my memory.
I see. How long did you spend preparing for that trip?
We didn't prepare much. Maybe a week for logistics, like booking a couple of nights and checking routes. Most of the planning was informal. We asked locals and changed plans as we went, which I think made it more enjoyable.
Interesting. Did the journey change the way you travel since then?
Yes, I think it did. Since then, I've favored slower travel with room for improvisation. I value immersive experiences rather than ticking off many sites quickly. Also, I now carry a small sketchbook and a better camera to document places, because that trip taught me how creative impulses can be sparked by travel.
Right. Let's go to part 3. We'll discuss travel and its wider effects. How has travel changed compared to 20 years ago?
Travel has changed significantly. Technology is probably the biggest driver. Booking, navigation, and information are accessible instantly. Low-cost airlines and online platforms have also increased mobility, so more people can travel farther and more frequently. On the other hand, that accessibility raises issues such as over-tourism in popular destinations and environmental impact from more frequent flights. There is also a cultural shift. People often look for curated experiences and social media-friendly moments, which affects how places are used and preserved.
Do you think traveling is important for young people?
Absolutely. For young people, travel offers exposure to different cultures and perspectives, which can broaden thinking and empathy. It can build independence, problem-solving skills, and language practice. However, there's a caveat. Travel should be responsible and educational rather than purely performative. Young travelers benefit most when they engage genuinely with local communities rather than just consuming the highlights.
How does tourism affect local communities?
Tourism can bring economic benefits, jobs, investment in infrastructure, and markets for local goods. But negative effects include rising living costs, displacement, and cultural commodification. The balance depends on management. Community-led tourism that involves locals in decision-making tends to produce better outcomes because it distributes benefits and preserves social fabric. Poorly planned tourism, in contrast, can erode livelihoods and environment.
What can governments do to reduce the negative effects of tourism?
Governments can implement policies like visitor caps at sensitive sites, invest in sustainable infrastructure, and regulate short-term rentals to protect housing supply. They can also support training for local entrepreneurs and create funds that channel tourist revenue back into community projects. Importantly, planning should be long-term and involve stakeholders so that tourism development doesn't compromise cultural and environmental integrity.
Do you think technology makes travel better or worse?
It's both. Technology improves convenience, safety, and access to information, which can enhance experiences. But it can also detract by encouraging surface-level engagement, like people focusing on photographing rather than noticing. There's also the issue of digital platforms driving volume and competition that harms local economies if not managed. Ideally, technology should be used to support authentic and sustainable travel practices.
How important is cultural sensitivity when visiting another country?
Cultural sensitivity is essential. Respecting local customs, learning a few phrases, and being mindful of dress codes or behaviors can go a long way in building positive interactions. It reduces misunderstanding and shows respect, which benefits both visitors and hosts. Education before travel helps, and local guides often provide valuable context that deepens appreciation.
Some people say that travel is a sign of privilege. What are your thoughts?
I agree that travel is unequally accessible. Financial means, visa restrictions, and time availability make it easier for some than others. Recognizing this privilege means advocating for fairer opportunities, such as exchange programs and affordable travel options. But it's also important not to moralize personal travel choices. Instead, we should focus on making travel more inclusive and sustainable.
Do you think local tourism is better than international tourism?
Both have value. Local tourism encourages people to appreciate their own regions and can be more sustainable due to lower travel distances. International tourism fosters cross-cultural exchange and economic ties. Ideally, a mix is healthy. Promoting local tourism reduces pressure on distant hotspots, while international travel fosters broader understanding. The key is to manage volumes and impacts responsibly.
How might travel habits change in the future?
I think travel will become more conscious. People may choose fewer long-haul trips but stay longer and engage more deeply. There's likely to be increased focus on low-carbon options like rail, and on immersive experiences that support local economies. Technology will continue to evolve, offering better trip planning and virtual previews, which might change expectations but shouldn't replace real experiences entirely.
Can architecture and urban design influence tourism?
Yes, design plays a big role. Iconic architecture can draw visitors, but thoughtful urban design also shapes the quality of tourist experiences through walkability, signposting, public spaces, and accessibility. Good design can distribute tourist flows across a city to avoid congestion and create meaningful places where visitors and residents coexist comfortably.
Why do some people prefer to travel alone while others prefer to go in groups?
Preferences depend on personality, goals, and practicalities. Solo travelers often seek solitude, independence, and personal growth, whereas group travel offers social connection, shared memories, and sometimes safety. Some prefer a mix: solo exploration with occasional group activities. Each mode suits different types of experiences and emotional needs.
Thank you. That is the end of the speaking test. Interesting.
The candidate demonstrated Band 8.5 level performance. Notable errors included using, "If I would have more time, I would visit more countries," when the correct version is, "If I had more time, I would visit more countries," and saying, "I am very interested about urban design," when the natural phrasing is, "I am very interested in urban design." These slips were infrequent and occurred when the candidate was producing more complex or hypothetical structures. Overall, the grammatical control was strong, with accurate use of complex sentences, varied tenses, and coherent linking devices. Vocabulary was precise and sophisticated, with phrases like pedestrian-friendly streets, community-led tourism, and over-tourism used appropriately. Occasional small preposition mistakes did not hinder meaning. Fluency was smooth and natural for the majority of the test, with only very brief hesitations and one self-correction, where the candidate said "what I mean is" when clarifying a point. These did not disrupt communication. Pronunciation and intonation were clear and natural, facilitating easy understanding throughout. The main reasons for awarding Band 8.5 are the candidate's wide lexical range, effective and flexible use of grammar, and sustained coherent discourse across Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. What prevented a higher band were the rare but noticeable slips in complex conditional forms and a couple of preposition choices under pressure. To reach Band 9, the candidate should eliminate these occasional inaccuracies and maintain perfect control of all complex structures, especially in hypotheticals. Strengths included excellent topic development, strong exemplification and personal anecdotes, varied sentence structures, and natural discourse markers. To improve further, deliberate practice on conditional and subjunctive constructions and a focused review of prepositions in context would be beneficial. Thank you for practicing with this IELTS speaking mock test. Visit Spinta for more comprehensive mock tests and personalized feedback to boost your IELTS score.